Hello again. This is part 2 of today's talk. I hope you were okay. I hope you listened to part 1 and enjoyed it. Part 2 and part 3 are going to be together in one video. And part 2, I want us to look at what the Bible teaches us about anger. What the Bible teaches us about anger. As you know, we're going through Mathew 5 and verses 21 to 26 talks to us about anger. So let me read it to you. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering a gift at the altar, and there remember that you have something against your brother, leave the gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, and come again and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you're still with him on your way, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. I tell you the truth, you will not get paid out until you have paid the last penny. Some great verses there that cover anger. Now, I don't want to be too sort of rigid in breaking down the verses, but each verse sort of tells us certain aspects of anger. So fairly straightforward verses. Verse 21, we all sort of know this. One of the commandments, do not murder. Now, I don't think many of us have got, or any of us will ever murder anybody. So I think that sort of doesn't really apply to us. But do not murder is a fairly straightforward commandment, which is something I don't have to explain to any of us or really sort of explore that. But verse 22 then goes on to talk about anger. And it says, anyone who is angry will be subject to judgment. Now, it talks about two types of anger. It talks about a thing called raka, where the word raka means empty-headed. So I don't know whether that's accusing somebody of being an empty head, sort of having no brains, as it would be in our language. But the word raka is used in this verse. Do not use the word raka, otherwise you will be subject to judgment. You answer to the Sanhedrin in the time. Each city had 2 courts. They had a lower Sanhedrin and a greater Sanhedrin where judges would judge on matters of injustice and sort of things like this. They had 23 judges in the lesser court and 71 judges in the greater court. But obviously the word raka was used in those days, and that would be described somebody with an empty head, and it is something that you shouldn't do. And if you did, you'd be subject to going to court, which is a mad thing. And then it goes on to say that you shouldn't use the word fool. Obviously, that's a step above anger that they describe in the book. That you sort of go from one level, you empty head, to you fool. I suppose that's a bit more stronger, and it's a bit more sort of, and that the consequence of that, according to the to Jesus when he spoke, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Wow, that's a very serious consequence for calling somebody a fool, or for sort of the next level of anger that you go into. Now, I could have gone through 30 or 40 different verses in the Bible that talked about anger. I did look and read probably about 20 or 30 of them, but there's some great verses that talk about anger and sort of really sort of highlight the importance of not being angry, really. But I think this was one of my favourite ones. Proverbs 14 verse 17 says, people with a hot temper do foolish things, which they do, don't they? You don't think straight, you don't think rationally, and you sort of act on impulse as soon as you're angry. Sort of, when somebody cuts you up, you don't think twice. You don't think, all right, what should I do when that guy's cut me up now? Should I just think about it? You act straight away. Well, some of you probably act better than others, but some of us will act straight away when that guy cuts us up and either say something or make a gesture. But it's people with a hot temper do foolish things. And do you know what it says to end? It says, wiser people remain calm in situations. Wiser people remain calm. Another one is from Psalm 37 verse 8, where it says, do not give in to worry or anger, because do you know what? It leads us into trouble. Anger, Psalm says, anger leads us into trouble. And it's true, when you're angry, it doesn't very rarely or never leads us into good things, does it? When we're angry, it always leads us somewhere where we shouldn't really be going. So that's a great verse, Psalm 37, verse 8. Do not give in to worry or anger, because it will lead you into trouble. Another one I found, which is a great one and a really challenging one, is from James. James chapter 1 verse 20 says, for a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Wow. I'll read that again. James 1 verse 20 says, for a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. I said deserves the first time. God desires. We all want to live a godly life as Christians that God desires. We want to walk the walk and talk the talk, don't we? And this is saying that if you're angry, it doesn't bring about righteousness. We won't lead our lives in the way that we should if we're an angry person or if we get angry. So, it's all very well talking about anger. It's all very well sort of looking at the ways, the different types of anger, which we did in the first bit of the talk, and what the Bible says about anger. It's great to have some application. What can we do about anger? Because, let's all be honest with each other. We all get angry in different times of our lives, in different levels, in different ways. Some of it is righteous anger, some of it is aggressive anger, some of it is the other two angers that we spoke about originally. But we all get angry, don't we? And I know sometimes that, there's different sort of methods that we've talked about over the years as children and as adults. Go and count to 10. Go and count to 10. That doesn't tend to work sometimes. Go for a walk. Go for a walk. When you come back, you'll be fine. Or take a time out. That's the new one thing. You should go sit on the step. Take a time out. But do you know what? We've already seen in Proverbs. It's about being wise. Where it says, "Wise people remain calm." Do you know what? Where does our wisdom come from? It comes from God, doesn't it? It comes from this book. It comes from having communication with God, being in a right relationship with God. It's great to seek wisdom. That verse again we could use that we've heard the last couple of weeks. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And when you're transformed, it brings wisdom. And we can pray, we can seek God's counsel, we can read what his word says, but we want to be wise. And wise people, Proverbs said, remain calm. And that's something that we can do. The closer we are to God, the less easily angered we will be, and the calmer we will be. So what do we do in situations? The rest of Matthew talks about what we should do when we are angry or upset with somebody. And it's something that we don't really, I want to suggest we don't really know what to do when we're angry. We sort of go about things the wrong way. The rest of Matthew 23 to 26 says we should go to the person, reconcile, put things right. And it tells us to settle matters quickly and don't dwell. So, I want to suggest what we tend to do with this is a stupid analogy, but Superman upsets you. And what you do then, Superman's really upset you and wound you up. So what you do, you go to Spider-Man and say, do you know what, Spider-Man? Superman, he's really upset me. He's done my head in. Really done my head in. And Spider-Man says, oh yeah, he's a bit, yeah, I don't get on with Superman either. And then you walking along and you see Iron Man. He said, do you know what, that's Superman. Do you know, he's really upset me. He's really done my head in. He said, oh, Iron Man, you embroil Iron Man into your frustration and anger, and he starts having a dim view of Superman. And then eventually you go to somebody a bit wiser. You go to Wonder Woman, the wise woman. He said, yeah, do you know what? Superman has really done my head in. She said, oh, has he? Have you spoken to Superman about it? Have you sorted it out? Because Superman's a good guy. He probably didn't mean to anger you. Probably didn't mean to wind you up. But what we should do in the first place is not involve everybody else. We should go to Superman. We should say, Superman, do you know what? You know what you said yesterday about me not being able to fly, or about my cracked tooth? You know, that really upset me. And Superman said, oh, look, you know, he's got a choice then, isn't he? He's got a choice to put things right. He said, oh, look, I'm really sorry. Do you know what I mean? I didn't mean to upset you. It was something that I didn't mean. And it's over then, isn't it? It's over. You're reconciled with your brother. You're reconciled in that moment. But if you go around the houses and talk to everybody else and sort of moan everybody else, put it on Facebook or do whatever you do with it, it's not going to solve the situation. I'm not sure whether we will be speaking on each chapter of Matthew or each verse within it, and so I won't go into it too much, but Matthew 18 verse 15 says, if your brother sins against you, go and point it out to them. Point out their fault just between the two of you. Don't involve anybody else, just between the two of you. And do you know what? It says, if they listen to you, you have won them over. There's no need for anger. If you go to your brother and say, look, you've done this, you've done that, they've got a choice then. And if they listen, great. And then I won't go into it because it's another sermon all within itself. But then it tells you to do something else. But if you want to read that, Matthew 18 verse 15 onwards, I'm sure there's probably a chance that as we go through Matthew, we'll talk about that. But it clearly tells you, if your brother sins against you, go and speak to them. Don't go speaking to everybody else because they've got an opportunity. So the keys to containing your anger, be wise. Wise people don't get angry. And to be wise, you know, let's get closer to God. Let's read his word. Let's pray. Let's communicate with him. Let's have a right relationship with him. And we'll be slower to anger than we normally are. And when we are angry, let's put things right. Let's go to our brother and say, look, put our arm around and say, do you know what? You upset me there. And they've got a choice then of putting things right. Just to finish, Byron reads this devotional, not this particular one. This is my father-in-law, so I pinched off his shelf. But Byron reads this devotional every morning. And day before yesterday, he said, wow, he said, I've been reading something that would be really good for your talk and ties in with your talk. So to finish, I just want to, it's got some wisdom in it. It's written by Bear Grylls, who's a Christian. It's got a great bit of wisdom in it. I really enjoyed reading it. So I want to read it to finish off my talk. And the title of the daily reading is Made for Emotion. And it talks about becoming wise. Becoming wise doesn't mean that we drain our lives of all passion. On the contrary, emotion is a key part of all relationships, especially with God. Honesty is good, and expressing raw emotions is natural and healthy. In fact, a little anger from time to time is not a bad thing. Jesus expressed righteous anger, often at hypocrisy and corruption. But let's remember this solid advice from Paul, which comes from Ephesians. Go ahead and be angry. You do well to be angry, but do not use your anger as fuel for revenge. And don't stay angry. Don't go to bed angry. Don't give the devil that kind of foothold in your life. That's from Ephesians 4, verses 26 and 27. And he goes on to say, it's a great bit of wisdom that can help us deal with emotions of our lives. When feelings are running high, whether it's anger or frustration, nerves or sadness, we need to acknowledge, rather than bury those feelings, what matters is not being controlled, overwhelmed, or led astray by those emotions. Develop the wisdom to to discern between positive and negative emotions. Lift and relinquish the negative emotions to Christ. Hand them over to him. Amazing. Let us soothe them and bear them. Embrace the positive emotions as God-given fuel to your fire. He made us emotional beings, so see the emotions simply as part of who you are. Some bits are good, some less. Discern well. Let emotions enrich your life rather than control it. Isn't that great? Thank you, Byron, for that. It's a great way to end the talk. I hope you're all well. I'm missing you all. Just a few sort of announcements which I do at the end of every talk. On Tuesday, we meet on Zoom for what we call a house group, where we discuss what's been spoken on Sunday. Be great to see you all there. It was great last week where we discussed Chloe's talk. So if you're around on Tuesday, that generally starts about 8 o'clock, and then on Friday we always have a great night of fun where we have the quiz, and that's something that's great to get involved in. So if you're around on Tuesday or Friday, it'd be great to see you on the Zoom. But I love you all. God bless. Keep that anger in check. Go and see your brother, sister, mother, father, whoever you're angry with. Go and see it and sort it out with them. Love is the way forward. Love you all. Bye.